Hello, everyone. It's Joseph John Kaysen, the author of The Part About the Serpent. I think it's something that everyone should read, uh, preferably not young children. Some of it gets a little frank at times, but I have I had someone thank me for not being too graphic in places. They thanked me for that, which is weird because I thought I went over. Um, Welcome to my temporary studio. I know the lighting is going to conflict with making videos. I have no complaints about the sunlight, though I know that the camera is going to be vying for light. I've got a can light over my head and a lamp light looking directly at me. But for some reason, videos are better captured at night. Kind of like the lyrics from Bob Seger said, strange how the night moves when you simply, uh, it's funny how the night moves when you simply haven't as much to lose. Anyway, um, to preface this video, um, relaxing enough to actually record a video is one of the most difficult things for me. Um, I played guitar and sang through my 20s, um, trying so hard to capture the right sound. You know, getting the I never made a good recording ever because it wasn't good enough. And one of my teachers told me that some things are better done wrong than not done at all. I don't know if he actually said that, but that was his his motto. You know, not that he did things wrong. He was really good at what he did, uh, even to the point of losing money to do what's right. And I thought, well, he's the kind of guy to follow. You know. So relaxing is very difficult to do to make a video for me. Um, so for the past several years, maybe 5 years, I've been looking into cortisol shock and trauma. And if you know people that have been traumatized or you've been traumatized yourself from events in life or situations or maybe, an accident or something, those people stay traumatized. And it's like a cortisol blast physically in your mind where you stay in fight or flight. So I've been working the last several years on how to reverse that and how to calm it. Chamomile tea, melatonin, thinking good thoughts, watching sunsets, getting sunlight into your visual pathways, um, which produces melatonin. People in their mid 20s start to lose the ability to produce melatonin, which is like the reverse physical effect of cortisol. Cortisol is good, but what happens when you get a cortisol blast in your body, it being in the fight or flight situation or mode causes you to it causes your body to spend all its energy on the fight or flight, and then things like healing and mental processing and things like that can never take place. So you wind up with all these, you start getting physical ailments and stuff like that because your body can't heal. And this is just the physical side of it. So the last several years, I've been really working on reversing trauma and learning about it and seeing it. It makes me cry, you know. But I wanted to get into writing and the arts and creativity without yelling, if I can. Hopefully, this mic is picking me up All right. Um, when I was younger, playing guitar and wanting to be creative, the reason why I became creative was because I didn't know how to express myself in words. Scholastically, I didn't know how. I didn't know what to say, but I knew things had to be said, and I was very passionate. And so I believe that words are inferior to expression. And I know that sounds kind of strange. You think that anything could be explained, but you look at music. I mean, that's a form of expression where words can't go. And like praying in tongue, it's a form of expression where words can't go. We don't always know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit, what groans, it, it, it makes utterances and groans um, intercessantly that God can hear, uh, but we don't know what we're saying. So it's actually like music. It's funny that music set out to be a form of expression without words, but then we add words to it and then complicate it. I don't know. Maybe that's a little deep, but that's good. That I need that uh, relaxed mode. So I mean, when I was younger, I had physical ailments. I had asthma really bad, like seeing stars and having to live on respirators and crap like that. Not respirators, like hospital respirators. Yeah, I was rushed to emergency a few times, but I had to live on vaporizers. I had to like hug the damn things at night just to make it through the night. And my mom learned to sleep in close proximity to me to evaluate my breathing throughout the night. And it was um, so bad. There was one time that I remember I had to crawl to the refrigerator, crawl to open it to get something to eat to try to get some more energy. But what that sickness afforded me was alone time at home because public school was just frickin' abusive. And that's part of the passion that I have today of being an artist is to um, debunk all that crap that we learned when we were younger or we were forced to learn and the way we learned it. And I could go on and on about it. It's very systematic and it's very deliberate as a I don't form of social acceptance or something. Everyone always says that the church and the masses are like some design mind control or something like that. Well, there's something to controlling your mind. There's something about it. Um, Meaning, terms like brainwashing. Sometimes it's good to have your brain washed. If it's being washed with the truth, that's great. Um, Deprogram all the crap that you were exposed to. Well, I'm gonna pop off of relaxing and get into writing. I think if I were to name my number one writer of all time, it would be Laura Ingalls Wilder. Her publisher said that she was probably an untutored genius, and it's really obvious that she was. She was scholastically brilliant. She was a school teacher, and they lived in a shanty. And you look at the titles of the books: Little House on the Prairie, Little House in the Big Woods. What they were little claim shanties, and they had a family living in there. So you got a young, affluent young girl growing up in there, I don't know, carrying feces out in buckets, as part of chores and stuff like that. Having babies in there and stuff, a whole family in there, and all that grief and pause, trying to convince the family that this is a better life and everything. It was like living in a fish shanty. Imagine that, a family. So Laura, being a seer and all this passion and energy, went out and saw life a little bit differently. And I'll give you an example. So one time she was on a train, sitting on the train in the station. It was her first experience on a train, so she explained everything about it. And suddenly, looking out the windows, the trees in the station started to move. Well, that's funny because that's what we experience and that's what we see, but that's really physically not what happened. The train started to move, but that's what made her a profound writer to me and spoke to me as a visual seer. So everything Laura speaks about are in terms of seeing. So there's three types of learning. There's kinesthetic, uh, kinesthetic. I don't remember the exact terms, but there's seers, hearers, and doers. Those are the realistic terms. Um, so Laura was a seer. So when she was teaching her class, all the things that she spoke about were in terms of seeing, meaning, so if you look at it this way, or it appears to be this, so anybody that was a seer in her class would be able to follow her. But if she had a kinesthetic or um, a an, an audible learner, they wouldn't be able to follow her. So in today's classroom, those people would be um, kind of condemned as learning differently, which is very sad. I bet you Laura probably even knew those things when she was teaching. She probably knew if there were kids that were falling behind, that she wasn't communicating with them properly because their preferred learning style was different from hers, and she probably put in the effort to try to breach that gap. I believe she was that smart. And so I have to give a lot of credit to people that helped me through the years. There was my friend John. He was my brother's best friend at one time. And so my brother was 8 years older than me, and I didn't have a father in the house, so my brother was my um, he was my social influence. So the music that he listened to, I was into that. So my music taste uh, were a little dated for my age. And when I was home alone all those days from school, my creativity came alive. It afforded me to be creative, and I would play air guitar. I wound up buying a Magnum guitar from a pawn shop, which is the same thing that what Magnum, is it a Magnum? A Gibson SG. The same thing that Angus Young plays. I mean, you could chop a tree down with it. It's a heavy duty guitar, and they're classic items today. I befriended a guy that his dad owned a guitar shop, and he would loan me his guitars. He'd let me play anything, but there was a Magnum on the wall one time. Uh, SG, I don't know if I'm getting the name right. Magnum, maybe not a Magnum, a Gibson SG, and he said, "Don't touch that one." It was obviously somebody else's, and his dad was repairing it. But he said, "Don't touch that one." Because it's a highly prized guitar. I didn't even know what I had. I traded it for a pair of tennis shoes at one time. Um, but John, um, he was a guitar player, and I remember going to his house one time to visit him. He was such a loyal friend. He would do anything for me. We worked at the same place for a while. He had a guitar at his place, it had dust on it, which I couldn't believe. And the guitar, just looking at it, was like a god to me. And he had an amp, and it had distortion. And it was a Les Paul of some sort. It was blue. It was a blue Gibson copy of some sort, and it was just awesome. It was just a god to me. And so John kind of took me in with my love of music, and so he fostered and necessitated for me anything I needed: guitar chords, pedal effects, guitars themselves, instruments, knowledge, music, anything that I ever needed um, musically. He just freely gave to me. Um, Guitar techniques. So he saw in me, he thought, well, I'm probably not cut out to be, be fronting a band or anything like that. But maybe you are. So he fostered me and just picked me up so that I could do it. And I remember there was a particular guitar out there called the Paul. It was a one piece guitar, meaning that the neck and the body were one piece. It was mahogany. Mahogany, it was a Gibson cut guitar, electric guitar, and it had the mahogany look to it, and it was for sale from a friend of ours. And John, he had rent to pay and he had bills to pay, and whatever, he had to be a responsible adult. And so um, my money, I mean, I could just go spend all my money on a bag of weed tonight and no loss. As far as my responsibilities went, I was just a kind of a derelict compared to John. And I hooked up with him years later, and he told me, he said, well, I wound up buying this guitar. And John said, man, every week I put money away to buy that guitar, and you bought it. And, there was no animosity or anything, and I felt so horrible because I wasted it. I wound up trading it for a Yamaha with a whammy bar on it because I thought that was cooler. And I thought it would be a really good idea to hunt that guitar down, or that model. There weren't many of them made, and buy it for him and put a red ribbon on it, and just hand it to him, give it to him, or send it to him or something. But he wound up dying of cancer, brain cancer, a few years ago. Uh, it's just one of those lessons that life is really short. But he, as an artist, he passed the buck to me, and he would do anything to promote my work. So anyway, going back, I preferred to communicate um, on my own terms, to learn on my own terms. I did nothing at school. I dropped out before I even finished eighth grade. And then when I was 30, I regretted that I pissed my education away, so I went the other way, and I traded all that visual and sound and emotional experience and learning that I knew. I traded it for words, and then tried to lucubrate and express myself in words. And I still believe that words are inferior to expression. And God gave us touch. God gave us romance. He gave us tear ducts for a reason, to express ourselves that way. And I think that's when we pray in tongues, that's a form of communication where words can't go, though the Spirit um, translates that into something that God can understand. I'm sure God can understand what you're saying when you're crying. You don't have to say anything. I'm sure you probably all remember times that your mother cried. There's no words for it. You can't capture it in words, even though you could try, and it would be nice, but it's impossible, you know. Um, So while I was writing my book, there were so many pitfalls, things that I did that were unnecessary, because I tend to be unorganized guy, and I had files and files and files of this chapter and that chapter and ideas and this, and I still have them taking up data space that were completely unnecessary. And I was in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan one time, and this woman heard that I was writing a book, and she stepped up and she was like, I'm writing a book too. I think I have experiences that people would, need to know about. She said, but, she disclaimed herself, but I'm writing it with a pencil and on a notebook. And I was like, there is nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I said, I mean, when you're done with it, you can have somebody typeset it, or you can typeset it yourself, learn how or whatever, or maybe even do it through an audio app. And she's probably got better handwriting than uh, she's probably got great handwriting, in the process. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Doesn't matter how you do it. She was just looking at the difficulty of actually getting it published on paper. It is difficult. That was tough. Getting it formatted and getting it into paper form that can be put on a shelf. That's a little difficult. But that can be done later. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Um, so there was Iggy Pop. When he was younger, he was not really musically inclined. Never really was. It was like, well, I don't know if I can play an instrument or anything. I can't, sing. I don't have all that, but maybe I can just dance around in my underwear and do it with my body. And that's what he did. He made a living at doing that, because that was his way of expressing himself. So, well, yesterday I had to go and get a business account to start selling my books, and that's what I didn't want to do. I can write the thing and I can publish it, but selling it, I'm not a salesman. I'm not in it for a buck. I don't care. I want people to hear the message, um, whether I make a dime at it or get sued. I don't care. And so I had to come up with a supposed name rather than my own name to open the account. I had to have a DBA to do it and have to use a supposed name. And all I have on my website, it's called Remedial Publishing, because that's just a description of the kind of things I write. This is what you should expect. Remedial Publishing. According to the IRS, technically I'm a publisher, which is really not true. I don't have like a printing press or anything like that, but technically I'm a publisher. So remedial publishing, so meaning I'm telling anybody that looks on my website, that's what you should expect. Remedial type publishing. You're going to find salvation. You're going to find answers. You're going to find um, remedy, whatever it is, whether it's nutrition, whether it's cortisol, whether it's God's word, whether it's trauma. It's going to be remedial. So I had to open up call under the word Remedial Publishing. That's the title of the company. So now I have to have a company, and I wanted to do that to just narrow all my writing into one enterprise, one endeavor. Like I said, those were things I didn't want to do. When I wrote the part about the serpent, the day after I published it, I went on a walkabout. I wanted to get as far away from that thing as possible. So I started drinking gallons of wine. I started walking beaches. Just, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I never really wanted to talk about the things that are in it. And that's why I think people should read it, because there's a lot of dark reality in there that a lot of us choose to try to escape from, and I'm still trying to escape it. That's why I said, I wish I had the money that I could hire a PR firm to go and promote this, and I did look into it, and they expected me to do radio shows and things like that, and airtime, and I was like, oh my God, I don't think I could do that. But the only way to actually publish your work, to get it exposed, is to do that work, to get out there, bite the bullet, say what needs to be said, do the interviews, take the bright lights, whatever, and just do it. And that's what I'm doing now, which is good. That's what I wanted to do um, my whole life, rather than the 9 to 5, working 3 jobs, unable to afford your car insurance life that is very much designed, and that goes back to the public education classroom, sitting in front of an authoritative figure that's at a desk at the ring of a bell. Then later in life, there's a ring of a bell to go to work, there's a ring of a bell to take lunch, there's a ring of a bell to go back to work. Back in Bible times, there weren't automobiles, and nobody really traveled 5 miles out of their community. When a house needed to be built, everybody pitched in. Things were a lot different then. Where was I going with that? It had to do with learning. Mm. It's good having too much to say. One of the reasons why I really need to find ways to relax, even if it's unorthodox. um, you'll find that people that have gone through trauma, you'll find people that are passionate and have a lot to say. They temper their passion with some sort of external calming mechanism. And unfortunately, a lot of them get into drugs and alcohol. And that was my scene, through the 90s until I was 30. And even after, I come across people that have so much life experience and so many good things to say, and so much to offer other people, that don't live a life like you would expect them to live. I've met drunks that had stock in Exxon Mobil passed down through their family that they've walked away from, and they would have to, if for them to go and claim the royalties to those stocks, they would have to prove to the stockholders or to their attorneys that they are sober now, and they just walked away from it. And not so much because they just wanted to drink and couldn't quit, it's because they didn't want to have anything to do with that lifestyle and what they saw their family go through with that money, and they think nothing of it. And you don't know these stories, you don't see these things when you walk up to a homeless person. You would never know. There was a situation where I was, an on fire Christian, and I was like really taking the risks for my beliefs and God's word that I knew no one was willing to take, and that meant losing my livelihood, it meant losing my home, it meant losing my friends, it meant losing my family. And I was in a situation working for a gem manufacturer. I was just his gardener. and he brought me in his home when the season ended to do other things. So I kind of became his right hand man. You know, he'd fly to Japan, and I'm picking up his kid and stuff like that. If his son was locked out, I'd be over there getting him in, stuff like that. Just um, trying to take care of his estate, basically. And then he made me an offer one time. He said, "Look, here's the deal. I want a resume from you." He said, "In your first year, you make 24 million. In your second year, you lose 2 million. In your third year, you make 26 million." Uh, and he never told me what the business was. He did, all he did was cyber meetings from his basement all day, fly around the world, do speeches and stuff. I was like, okay, well, but this guy had put me in a situation where my car broke down one time, and I had to call him for assistance on my way home from his house. So we're sitting in his car, and the police went by, and he said, "Get in the driver's seat." And I was like, okay. So we switched seats. And a few minutes later, I asked him, "So why did we do the switcheroo?" He said, "You're driving." I was like, oh, okay, so he's expecting me to lie to the police that I'm driving his vehicle, which could go to court, and he's expecting me as his gardener to lie on the stand for him. So if he's going to put me to work for 24 or 26 million dollars a year, which I would probably not even have to get out of my bathrobe to finish the day's work, he's going to he's expecting me to lie in little ways. He's going to expect me to be lying in very big ways. So his best employee is, when there's 24 or 26 million dollars at stake, he expects them to pull a dirty to get out of it. That's just normal business. And so I typically like making resumes, and I would be really up for the job, but I couldn't do it. And I wrote him a formal resignation, and the phone rang again. It was his number, and I forced myself to back away from the phone. He was still trying to bring me in. He saw the qualities, and he saw the improvements that I was making for his estate, and he wanted to add that to his company, thinking that was going to help it. But he didn't realize that I would bankrupt that company, because if it did go to court, and if there was $26 million at stake and he pulled a dirty, I would have to say, no, that's wrong, it didn't happen. He would be bankrupt. That's why his best employee is probably his best liar. And I couldn't live like that. And I wound up going homeless after that for quite a few years. And still, I'm always in a temporary situation. I'm always kind of on the run. Really, always the tail, never the head. Always in a borrowing situation, always at the mercy. I wound up having to rent from people that I wouldn't typically rent to myself. And that came from the sacrifices that I was making for the truth and for God's word. So, if there's people out there that would, want to make me feel bad for not having any money or anything like that, not driving in a nice shiny car or whatever it is that people set their values on, they can't. Those kind of figures, people, I don't typically tell people, because the people can't even imagine winning $1 million in the lottery and what that might do in their life or something like that, how that might redeem other woes or something. So imagine $26 million in your first year. That could get you around a little bit. Though that was no place for me. it's funny. I learn things. The devil always says come here. He never says get away. So when I the getaway get the getaway sign, I know that it's not him. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this video right now. I just wanted to share a little bit, of maybe try to encourage you in your art or your creativity, whatever it is you do, whether you're a podcaster or a writer or a musician. Um, some things are better done wrong than not done at all.